Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, regular listeners will know my three big passions in life are technology, music and travel. And I think there is a great synergy between the three of them. And I'm sure anyone who's been on a 12-hour flight or a long train journey when you just want to block out the world with a big pair of cans and some great tunes will know exactly where I'm coming from. And as an ageing music fan that still loves watching live bands and heading for my annual pilgrimage to the Glastonbury Festival each year, I do, though, remember how things often sounded better when listening to vinyl and CDs when compared to compressed audio through an online streaming service and ill-fitting earbuds. And it got me thinking, it seems that somewhere along the way, we sacrificed the convenience of having music on demand from any artist that you can think of for sound quality. So I wanted to explore the world of audio technology today, and that path led me to a great guy called Jacobi Anstruther, who's interested in knowledge in tech, came from working with multiple startups specialising in music venues and record labels. And Iris is essentially a revolutionary new audio technology company that is on a mission to enable the world to listen well. And their patented algorithms use advanced psycho-acoustics, machine learning and AI to create this cutting-edge sound innovation software that enhances audio streams in real time and as a result dramatically increases sound quality. And if all that is not enough, Iris's AI voice isolation software, Iris Clarity, is removing unwanted background noise and interference from both sides of calls and video conferencing in even the most demanding of environments. So for any audiophiles out there, buckle up and hold on tight, so I can beam your ears all the way to London, where Jacobi Anstruther is waiting to share his incredibly cool story. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me. I'm the CEO and founder of Iris Technologies, and we are a audio business with a unique twist in the fact that our heritage and our background comes from engineers and neuroscientists studying the human interaction with audio. So we uniquely look at how sensory input stimuli affects the way we absorb information, have emotional response, and many other factors when we listen.
You mentioned your heritage and story there, so I've got to ask, I'd love to take you back way before Iris and ask you to share your origin story, because when I was researching you, I read that your interest in knowledge in tech actually came from working with multiple startups specialising in music, venues and record labels. So can you share that story?
Yeah, I'll keep it light, but I set up my first business at the age of 16. I've set up a number of companies through my career, ranging from a plethora of different things. I also had a background where I worked in private equity for 5 or 6 years. But everything that sort of drove me to the culmination of what we do now here at Iris was my knowledge and experience within the music industry. I used to produce music. I owned a record label, still own a record label, and I've been heavily involved in the music industry from that side, while also having a sort of deep passion for building businesses and entrepreneurship.
Wow, love that. And of course, here in 2022, Iris is a audio technology company that's on a mission to enable the world to listen well. And for people hearing about Iris for the first time, can you tell me more about the kind of problems that you set out to solve?
Yeah, I think if we look at music as a sort of easy entry point to the conversation, we look at the fact that music is at the center of every culture, every tribe. It affects every mood, from us to relaxing us to motivating us in the gym, making us cry, laugh. And it's a heavily emotive product. And when we looked at the market and how we were moving into a world, or our crystal ball at the time showed us that we would move into a world where the majority of the information we receive would move from a visual interaction to an audio interaction. And this was back in 2017, so prior to the boom we've seen in podcasts and audiobooks, obviously the excessive amount of audio we consume from remote working because of the global pandemic and how it's accelerated that world. But our view back then was much more simple than the journey we've been through for the last few years, but very much around the fact that you can listen and multitask. And in the fast, busy life we live and work in today, that was going to inevitably become more and more important. So we looked at the industry and we'd seen huge innovation in the visual aspects, and still is the case today as we see the amount of money being invested in CES this January, all focused around the visual aspects of the metaverse and other industries that are the sort of hot topics at the moment. But really very few businesses focusing on the audio component. We then started studying, as we moved into digital consumption of audio, what was missing from how we've evolved to listen over X million years. And what is the most important and integral part of that is when we listen to a live audio stream, whether it's me speaking to you in the room or a live band at a concert, what we're doing is picking up what's called the real and the imaginary of sound. The real is what's coming directly from the player or the instrument or my voice to your ears. And the imaginary is all of the other components of the space of the room where you're located in the room. And everybody in that room is having a different experience for three fundamental reasons. The first being their position in the room in relation to the artist or the speaker. And that distance obviously varies. Therefore, the experience and how we consume that audio varies. The second is the space of the room around them and the frequency waves that are bouncing off what might be a glass wall next to you or a hard table in front of you, a soft couch underneath you. And what we're doing is our brain is picking up all of this out of time information and processing it so it makes sense to you. Otherwise, I think it would be rather a confusing and scary world. So what's happening is a process called binaural phasing, where the brain understands that between 20 and 30,000 frequency waves at any given moment of time correlate with the ones that match, and they're just out of time, therefore creating what's called a bio-soundscape, which is your understanding of your environment through listening. So that's the second reason that we have a different experience when we consume audio from one person to another. The third reason is how our brains actually process that information. So when we strap someone up to an EEG or fMRI machine, we can see the brain, while listening to the same content, varies very much in terms of how it processes that information. And what's interesting about listening to music is it is the only activity we do in our day-to-day lives where we use the entirety of our brain in this process of binaural phasing. And then the final piece is the subjective element. So there's part of what we are consuming is changes depending on our emotional response to it, our nurture, why I might like a certain song that you dislike, or something might make me relax that hypes up someone else, and that changes. And so unlike our other senses, audio is an interesting one because firstly, we're fully engaged in the listening experience with the neurological response and this processing or binaural phasing that goes on. And secondly, we actually process audio between 20 and 100 times faster than any of our other senses. So there's argument to say that audio shapes every experience. When we watch waves roll in on a beach or we eat something, the sound is the bit that we experience first, and therefore it is one of arguably the most important elements of that experience. So understanding all of this, which we do deeply, and the emotional response that we get from audio, we started to study what's happening in the digital environment where you're no longer listening in the way that you've evolved to listen over millions of years, but you're now listening to what we call an artificial soundscape that has been designed by an engineer or a handful of engineers. And what I mean by that is if that same live concert we were listening to, I referred to earlier, was being recorded in a recording studio, the artist would be recording from a single point microphone into a mixing board. And all that spatial information or those imaginary components is missing. So the engineer receives what is quite a flat and lifeless audio experience. So he will then add tricks to try and give you a more three-dimensional experience: panning, reverb, echo, many different types of EQ that you can find in the market. Then a formatting company will do its own frequency manipulation, and then the EQ driver within your headphones or speaker system that you're listening to, again, will generally have its own processing. And in each layer of that engineering, what we see is the brain is becoming more and more passive, less active. It's not working or piecing together a bio soundscape. It's listening to an artificial soundscape that's been created and plonked on top of them, whether that's a guitar on the left and a hi-hat on the right, or panning or positional speaking when you're in a meeting through a virtual environment. What you're not doing is piecing together the soundscape. So therefore, the brain is far less active, which is why we talk about active listening within the business. It's passive listening. And therefore, you're less engaged. You're less likely to remember the content, and you have a much lower emotional response. We take that investigation a little bit further. And when we listen to audio through our core algorithm, what happens is we give you the information as if you were in almost infinite phase. So that means you're now sitting in every seat in that arena simultaneously. And it's in that increase of information that the brain goes to work to create this rather beautiful neurological response, which is known commonly as flow state, which you might have heard of being in the zone, where you lose sense of self and time and you're fully immersed in the experience. And there's a really positive mental wellness response to that, it being good for you in the same way that it is to meditate and sort of declutter your environment and the stresses and anxiety of day-to-day life. So that was sort of the core understanding and where this business spawned from. And then from there, we've developed many solutions for different problems within the audio space and for our various partners.
Wow, I love that. And I've never actually sat down and thought about all the different aspects of the brain and what you're thinking about there when you're just putting on a big pair of cans or listening to some music, etc. But I'm curious, as this is a tech show, can you tell me a little bit more about the technology behind Iris and in particular, your proprietary algorithm? Because there's a lot going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, very much so. So we're a software SaaS business at our core. We've also developed some hardware. We launched a set of headphones last year that have been pretty well received in the market and well reviewed by some of our peers. But it all really comes down to the software and what we're doing. So we develop AI algorithms that really change your interaction with the audio through, well, depending on what we're talking about, we probably need to be specific about the various different technologies that we have under the hood here at Iris. And I can dive in a little bit deeper. But the one product we're particularly excited about at the moment is our Iris Clarity voice isolation technology. This is market leading. We developed it for one of our partners, which was the Red Bull Racing Formula One team. We were the official audio partner there, running all of their communications, and we decided to solve some of the problems that they were having. You know, it seemed amazing to me that in this hotbed of innovation that is Formula One, that we would still use pit boards to communicate with drivers because of the lack of confidence they had within the radio comms. And that comes from two reasons. One is it breaking, and that really wasn't our problem to fix. But two, and more importantly, was the background noise and the distortion, loud engines, loud noises in the garages, multi-way, 15-channel multi-way radios, and very confusing, quick sound bites of information. So we developed an AI machine learning voice isolation software, not to be confused with noise cancelling, which is just microphones, I'm sure you know, microphones picking up your ambient sound and playing it back to your ears out of phase, creating this vacuum experience. What we're doing actually is bidirectionally removing any noise from my side of the call for you and for your side of the call for me. So you could be in a Formula One track and I could be in a noisy cafe, and we can totally control that uncontrollable environment. We had a lot of success with that technology as we shot into lockdown, and this problem became everybody's problem, with being on Zoom calls all day and Zoom fatigue and asking people to go to mute and dogs barking, kids screaming, all the day-to-day problems that we've all become so used to. So we started training the AI for more real life situations, and have just launched this product in the last couple of weeks, really targeting anything from enterprise to sort of specific communications like racing, aviation, military, all the way through to call centers and other applications I'm sure you can imagine.
And you mentioned this a few moments ago, but what does active listening allude to? Is that something you can expand on as well?
Yeah, so active listening is the process within, so under the hood of everything we do, we have our core IP, which is what I was talking about earlier, which is how the brain processes sensory input stimuli, specifically audio. So how we present the information to the listener, engaging them so they are active in the listening process rather than passively listening to a digital soundscape that has been pre-designed and formatted.
So who are your customers at Iris? Who do you serve? Just to help anyone listening understand who you
So we do have self-serve, B2C. We do serve individuals. You can go onto our website now and download an application which will sit on your laptop, Microsoft or Mac, and you can then run all of your Zoom calls or communications through that and remove any disruption. But predominantly our focus is on enterprise selling. So, we look at everything from call centers to large enterprise. We see a lot of the market not returning to offices. This is obviously a very popular topic at the moment. We know that HSBC have said 27,000 employees won't be returning to the office in the UK. Salesforce, I think 45,000 employees won't be returning to the office. So there's a big market there to really control that uncontrollable environment for a level of professionalism, a level of productivity flow. Also, when we look at call centers, there's an interesting conversation around customer experience, employee retention, when you're improving the environment and maybe the response that some of these operatives get when having to deal with people being on a call that they don't particularly want to be on. And when the line is bad or the communications is bad, that can often escalate the stress in that environment and definitely the success rate of those calls. So, and then finally, we're really looking at, and we're in a bit of a sprint to get ready for that by early summer at the moment, but implementing the algorithm within sort of lower processing units like a set of headphones, which obviously has a fraction of the processing power of a laptop or a mobile phone, so that we can really target aviation communications, military communications, and other markets within that bracket.
And another thing that really stood out was Iris's ability to pivot from hardware to software. Is that something you can talk about?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe it as a pivot, as it was always in our ambition to build a software business. The reason we went to build hardware was because we found the conversation very esoteric. It's very complicated for people to understand really what we were doing unless you experienced it. And when you talk about software, it isn't something tangible that you can put your hands on and wrap your mind around, and you somewhat have to listen to me to trust that we can do what we can do. So we took it upon ourselves to create a set of headphones. An amazing journey, a very challenging journey, particularly as we started that journey before the pandemic and found our production and factory team out in Shenzhen in China, and then quickly got locked down. So it made it very difficult to travel, and supply chains got cut off, and all the challenges I'm sure many businesses have felt through this last 2-year period. But it was really an ambition to show that with what was at the time a shoestring budget and a tiny team of people, that we could create a set of headphones that were market leading, because we were looking at sound differently, because we were studying the human interaction with audio. Rather than innovating for the sake of innovating and processing on top of processing, we really wanted to study what is that emotional response? How do we engage the listener with what they're listening to and make them listen in a way that they've evolved to listen and is most natural to them? And the response, I think the argument is music is nothing if it is an emotion. And therefore, if we can heighten that emotion and engagement with content, then the experience improves. So that was a sort of mission. We launched the headphones last year. And we had some wonderful reviews from the likes of the Financial Times saying this was the best audio product to hit the market in over 10 years. What Hi-Fi and many others sort of really got behind the way we were looking at audio and how we were trying to disrupt this industry in our own way.
And although we're only 2 months into 2022, it is proving to be an incredibly exciting year for you guys. But what is your grand vision for Iris? Where do you go from here?
I think we love this concept of, I mean, we have a long a long list of technologies that we want to continue developing and bring to the market, solving many problems within this sort of increasing consumption of digital audio and receiving information through this. Our mission statement as a business is enable the world to listen well. What we mean by that is both the quality of experience, but also the neurological response. And as I believe that mental well-being is really the currency and one of the most important conversations for the next 10 years. Any product that can help improve well-being in the aspects of whether it's at work and the stress of noisy environments all the way through to actually what we're looking at from a neurological response, I think has real value. What we want to build as a business is a gold standard and a trusted symbol in digital audio experiences through our SaaS products. So although we see ourselves as a B2B business at our core, what we really are is a B2B2C, a branded play that if you are buying a product or downloading a software and you know the audio has been enhanced or managed by Iris, you know that you're getting the best of the best. And that's really our focus. So it's that Intel Inside model or Dolby, I guess, who've really been the gold standard today in delivering quality audio within other products on an enterprise level.
Well, I wish you best of luck for the future. I'm going to be following your journey closely. I do love my audio too. And well, we started the podcast talking about your origin story, but as we come full circle, I usually ask my guests if there was a song, piece of music or a book that has inspired or helped them in their career. Now, as an audio guy, I'm very curious on what you're going to choose here. Is there a song you can choose for our Spotify playlist, and maybe a story behind it as well that we can leave the listeners with?
That's inspired me. Specifically, there is an album that is an album that I've been listening to since I was a child. That is definitely for me the most important album that I know and that is in my life. I'm not sure I would say it is my inspiration, but it's definitely my motivation when days are hard. But Paul Simon Graceland, I think, is the most wonderfully created album ever made.
Yeah, it's a great tune, isn't it? So many great tracks on there. So is there one particular one that you like?
Well, my true joy and pleasure of that is the fact that unlike the way we consume music today, you really do consume that as an album and you listen to it from start to finish and it takes you on a carefully crafted journey, which is something I really enjoy rather than just picking out songs.
Yeah, absolutely. The lost art of just listening to an album without getting bored midway through.
Exactly. Having the patience and the time to switch off and be present with an artist like that, I think is important moments in my life. I listen to a lot of vinyl, I have a big vinyl collection and I love to just sit back and consume audio and shut out the rest of the world. That's my meditation.
Love that. And before I let you go, for anyone listening who would just like to find out more information about Iris or contact your team, what's the best starting point?
Yeah, check out our website, iris.audio. All of the information, demos, you can hear how the technology works. I think the demos really show off how incredible what we're doing is, both from the immersive music side all the way through to the Iris Clarity. You can also check out the headphones there. So, I get in touch there or our Instagram, which is Iris Listen Well, and follow us there and you keep in touch with what we're doing and our view on the world.
Well, there's so much I've loved about our conversation today, especially as an audio guy as well. Your audio technology that's on this mission to enable the world to listen well. It's something we don't talk about enough because we've both come from the world of vinyl and CDs and that quality of sound. And then now everyone's listening to compressed music that they're streaming, and it just doesn't sound the same. And there's a lot from all that, but that's another podcast for another day.
That's another podcast, and I can talk to you for hours about that, Neil. Maybe we can do that offline. It's been a real pleasure and talking to you, especially someone who truly understands audio and what we're doing. When we must get you a set of headphones, so I'll make sure my team sends you a set and you can experience those because I think you'll find them very exciting. And let's stay in touch.
You're a gentleman. Thank you so much, my friend.
Take care, Neil. Bye-bye.
Wow, how cool was that? I need to get my hands on a pair of those. I mean, I love this idea of a new audio experience that dramatically increases sound quality by introducing the space that is normally missing from recorded audio. And as a result, unlocking that live dimension that is often lost. And for techies out there, if you take a look under the hood through that proprietary algorithm that is splitting out and increases the phase information sent to the brain, and the listener's brain then resembles the vast increased information and becomes far more active in the listening process. I always say at the end of every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. And Iris's latest AI technology, Iris Clarity, uses innovative voice isolation software to easily eliminate audio distractions and ultimately help bring the focus back to the conversation and bring people together. And that is what this podcast is all about. If I do get my hands on a pair of these, I will report back to you. But thanks so much for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.